Through Acts, we've been talking about the journey of expanding. And if you're new with us, we've been journeying through the book of Acts. And today we are still in Acts chapter 9. And after Saul's dramatic conversion, Luke shifts the spotlight back to Peter. So my text today is Acts chapter 9, verses 32 through 43. And I'm not going to read it this morning. It's a pretty simple text, so we don't have to sort through it. You're welcome. And at first glance, these stories seem simple. So Peter is traveling through the region and encounters two people. One name is Aeneas, and he's been paralyzed for 8 years. And Peter says to him, "Jesus Christ heals you. Rise and take up your bed." And the other is a woman named Tabitha, and she's known for her acts of kindness, her care in the community, and she dies, and the community is devastated. And Peter goes to her home, he prays, and he says, "Tabitha, get up." And she opens her eyes. And I feel like that's the word for today, is to get up. And I don't know about you, but it's easy to get stuck. Sometimes in the morning at 4 o'clock when my alarm goes off, I sit there and I have to tell myself, get up. Because I have spent several times contemplating, wasting time, saying, you know what, you need a little bit more sleep. You got a 2-hour drive. You can do some more sleep. And then my body's like, you need to work out. And then I'm like, oh, my back hurt, my head hurt, everything all of a sudden hurts. So you talk yourself out of that, and then you're like, well, I can push that off till later. And before you know it, you wasted 15, 20, 30 minutes contemplating and stuck. And the same cycle happens every day. So Aeneas is a disabled man, and neither person held any social power. Neither of them was described as wealthy, influential, or important in the worldly standards. Yet Luke gives them center stage. Why is that? Why would Luke want to focus on two insignificant people? And I think that's what God does. He hones in on the people that the world deems insignificant. So we all matter, no matter where we land in the world. The widow matters, the immigrant matters, the person that's struggling with depression. We all matter. And we all have a story to tell as well. And Luke isn't just telling miracles, he's showing us what expansion looks like when the church matures. And it's not about more people, it's about more compassion, more healing, and more restoration. And more people experiencing Christ through ordinary people. And are we not ordinary people? Ordinary people that all we have to do is accept the invitation to do the same. So that's where I want to spend a little of the time today. Because most of us are not physically paralyzed, and hopefully none of us are literally dead. I hope I haven't bored you to death already. Not yet. But we know what it feels like to merely exist instead of living. A few years ago, a popular phrase came out. You know what it was? Exactly. YOLO. You only live once. And people start taking that, and before they go on adventures or start taking risks or doing something spontaneous, they would say, you only live once, and then they would dive into the something new. And while this phrase is in scripture, it raises an important question. If you only get one life, are you truly living it? Because there's a difference between having a pulse and having purpose. There's a difference between being alive and being fully alive. And I wonder how many of us have settled for survival versus actually living. Because we go through our day-to-day, we get up, we go to work, we pay the bills, and it becomes this continuous cycle. And for 8 years, Ananias existed in a bed until Jesus restored him to living. 8 years with limitations, 8 years of people knowing him primarily for what he could not do. And how many of you get stuck in that where people put labels on you? You look through the Bible and it starts saying, Jesus healed the blind man, as if the blind man didn't have a life. You don't even give him a name. It's just like the blind man. And it's like we put titles on people and say, oh, the lazy girl, or whatever label we want to put, and that becomes their identity, that we don't see them as anything else besides where we got them stuck at. It's a lot of things that can paralyze us, and it's not just physical. Grief can paralyze, fear can paralyze, the belief that nothing would ever change can paralyze. And have anybody ever felt sleep paralysis? Is it fun? So if you don't know what it is, it's you wake up and you're stuck. You want to move. You can see stuff around you. It feels like something heavy is on your chest or something trying to get in you, and you are screaming and nothing is coming out. No one knows something is going on, and your body refuses to move. It's not a good feeling. So imagine Aeneas in this position, not for what we experienced for a couple seconds, not even 8 minutes. At least when we're in sleep paralysis, we know that eventually this is going to stop. Imagine it just keeps going on. And before you know it, 8 years has passed on. People stop coming by. Life goes on, and you are stuck. And you're not living because you're constantly trying to get up. That's how we go through life sometimes. We deal with grief, we deal with an experience, and it's like we constantly screaming to get up. We know what to do, and something keeps us stuck that we're like, I don't know why I can't get out of this loop. So when I was about 10 years old, I had a surgery, and I had an umbilical hernia, and I got home, and I was in the bed, and the only time I would get up was to go to the restroom. And I began to start walking hunched over. And one day, I was going to the restroom, and my mom said, Monique, if you don't straighten up, you're going to be stuck like that. And to me, it was like, you don't understand my pain. You ain't go to this surgery. I went through this. And as a little child, you're like, but it hurts. Our body naturally, I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I just want to walk like this. Your body would naturally find a way to protect itself. You go through a breakup, you naturally start saying, I got to protect my heart. Somebody rejects you, you naturally stop taking the chances because you don't want to feel that pain again. So my body didn't want to feel what it felt like to stand straight up. So I found a way to deal with it and move on. And sometimes even though we feel like we got out of being stuck, we find ways that we say, well, this is good enough. And we find something comfortable thinking that we're moving forward, but that's still not how God intended for our life to be. Because you know what being hunched over would have eventually did? It would have caused more stomach issues. It would have caused more body issues, more neck issues, more problems when we find ourselves trying to protect the things that got us stuck. So sometimes even like when Ananias got healed and we think that he just jumped out of the bed and started running, when you haven't used something for 8 years, that wasn't a just smooth process. Even though the surgery went well and they say, oh, you're healed, it took time to get back to myself. And you have to give yourself that grace. When you say, oh, I'm healed, and a lot of us come to church and we say, oh, God has healed you, and you expect to walk out this door and life to just be perfect. That's not always the case. Yes, you're healed, but there's still a process that you have to go through. That means trying to love again, even when it hurts. It means trying to forgive again, even when it hurts. instead of protecting yourself saying, I don't want to feel this again, so let me walk this way and protect myself, instead of straightening myself up, regardless of how painful it is, you got to make some type of correction. So whether you can walk out in it, try just standing up straight today and whatever got you stuck. Because when he picked up that mat, he didn't just say rise, he said take up your mat. That meant that he had no intentions of going back down and laying back down. Because for me, when I would go to the restroom, I would come back and I would get back in the bed because it was comfortable. And sometimes we get healed and we go back to what's normal. We'll go to counseling, we'll get some help, and then we go back to what's comfortable. This is all I know. And we go back to the same habits and the same patterns because it becomes comfortable. It's uncomfortable to keep walking when something is hurting you or causing you pain, no matter how free God has called you from something. And we find things to mask it with because we don't want to feel the pain. But I feel like the challenge today is to get up. And not only get up, don't go back and lay down. So when you find yourself in situations and you're like, why am I stuck in this? Take a step forward and say, can I do something different today? Can I walk into this freedom? I think of we just celebrated Juneteenth and how even that freedom was difficult. It's one thing to say, okay, all of you guys are free. And for a lot of people, they were like, okay, now what? What does freedom even mean? I don't have a house. I don't have no money. So sometimes our freedom and what God has freed us from, we like, now what? It sometimes feels like a burden. Now I got to experience and feel something I never felt. So sometimes we go back and we say, well, you know what? I would rather stay here because I don't want to figure out how to do it on my own. It's more comfortable dealing with what I've already been dealing with. So we have to take the step, even in the discomfort. And that's what life is. Life is not always sunshine and rainbows. Life is difficult. It's the seasons that's constantly going to change. And like we talked about earlier, when things look dead, God is always doing something underneath all of that stuff. But can we sit through being stuck? Can we sit through the dry seasons? Or do we always want it to be go, go, go? Because what do we learn in our paralysis? Sometimes we learn that maybe I wouldn't have seen this if I wasn't in this situation. Because we're so used to going, going, going. Some of us need to slow down. Because we're missing so much even then, trying to experience life still versus living it. There's a difference between experiencing life and wanting to do all the fun stuff and you still missing the important things of what God has purposed and destined for you to be doing in life. So the invitation that I feel Acts is saying is to rise, serve, and participate. Because Tabitha, when she died, the community grieved. That lets you know the impact that she had on the community. What might God be inviting you to rise? And what has kept you spiritually stuck? What would it look like to take one step towards life? And who around you needs to experience compassion through you today? If you died today, would you be a Tabitha? Would somebody say, oh, Janice taught me this. It was her love, it was her compassion that when I walked through the doors, she always saw me. How would people, what would they have when you leave? Are you showing compassion to others? Are you being light to others? Or are we so stuck in our own path that we don't even have the compassion or the energy for anybody else besides ourselves? Expansion happens when we take the steps to do something different, even if it's uncomfortable. So Terry's going to come back, and we're going to just reopen the altar, because I feel like God has been inviting us all morning through worship, through these prophetic images, that if you're stuck and you feel stuck, or if you've just been carrying something that you need to lay down, I invite you to get up, to take a step, to say, God, meet me here. And the elders will be here, the leaders will be here, that if you want somebody to journey along with you, to pray along with you, the altar is open for that. Amen.